really great guests. And going from one great guest to another, we are joined with Dr. Jim Kavanaugh. Dr. Jim Kavanaugh is a left socialist analyst and writer. You can find his work featured on Polemicist, that's Substack. You can also find him on Counterpunch here and on Garland's show and Press TV, by the way. Dr. Kavanaugh, welcome to the show, man. How you doing today? You doing all right?
I'm doing okay, yeah. And you're right, Brian is a great guy. He's very smart and he's doing great work. People should pay attention to him.
Oh man, yeah. The policy paper thing is,
yep.
He, like, as he points out, he's like, I'm not a psychic. I didn't, this wasn't like, me
they
just
write it all down.
Yeah, right. It's like that is the wild part, right? Yeah. Like they write that stuff out. It's like, we need to attack Iran. We need to go after Russia. And you think to yourself, it's like, but they know that other countries can read those policy papers. It's not like there's magic ink that only an American eyes can see it, right?
But it shows you how confident they are of controlling the narrative in the United States and controlling the American mind and the American public. Even though it's down there, it's written down there, the media apparatus kind of makes it invisible and makes it hard to see and presents you with another story, and you believe that other story, which is entirely false.
They give you another narrative, and then they fight for that narrative, right? It's just amazing to me that that's the way they operate, but that is indeed the way they operate. Yeah. I wanted to bring you on because I was curious about Donald Trump is effectively waging this weird tariff war. It is not going well, regardless of him waving his hands, and pretending magically that it's like there's no spoon. It's that type of thing, right? There's no spoon. Don't worry, there is no spoon. Everything is going great. And he's been doing this in one interview after the next. It is the wildest thing in the world to watch. Yeah. Like he says, people, they don't need 30 doll babies. It's like, who's buying 30 doll babies? Like that is the weirdest way of trying to explain why your prices are going up. And when the reporter points out to him, it's like, okay, so you admit that they can't afford those $30 babies, right? The prices are going up. Well, no, I'm not saying that. It's like, dude, you can't have it both ways. But he would say it both ways in an interview. You could see the dollar collapsing in value. You could see where the markets have lost like trillions of dollars in value. And you get Scott Bessent seemingly begging China, saying China should give us a call. We need a call from China. I was like, dude, China's not calling you. It's not going to happen. So, what I'm curious about, though, is even if I accept that his original premise is right, like, okay, we're losing manufacturing. We've been deindustrialized. People who are making $20 an hour are now working at, 7-Eleven or Subway making $8 an hour. Mm-hmm. Like, this is deleterious to society. It's not in our best interest. We're $30-something trillion in debt. What is the socialist answer to that? Like meaning, and I understand that it's like, hey, here's this flaming bag. I'm handing it to you. Now I need you to figure this out. I get that, right?
Yeah.
But how is there this kind of socialist leftist response to this? If, you had power in order to kind of push it through. I know the markets are going to freak out, but whatever. Yeah. How would you go about doing something like this from a leftist point of view?
Oh, well, first of all, I'd make sure everybody has their $30 because I want my $30.
Right. My 1,000 pencils, or whatever the hell he said.
250 pencils.
Yeah. It's outrageous.
Yeah. But look, this requires social planning. Okay. Socialism is a matter of ultimately workers of power, of the working class running the country on behalf of itself, which is the majority of people. Okay. We don't have that situation. We have a situation in which, to put it broadly speaking, from a socialist point of view, you run an economy and arrange an economy, which is not just a set of numbers, but it's the way people live, their material lives. And you arrange a situation in which people have good material security. They have homes, they have place to live, they have decent work, they have nice standards of living, they have health care, they have education, you can go on vacation, you take care of your kids, raise your kids. I mean, these are all things that are not, 200 years ago, that was utopian nonsense, or not, I mean, but capitalism, the socialist critique of capitalism has produced the possibility of doing all. Capitalism has created tremendous productivity of labor, and we are able to produce a lot of things. And we have a big society. We have a lot of resources. We're not a small island country. So we can do these things, and one of the things, I mean, look, that it's not even necessarily socialist, but it's kind of the preconditions of socialism. We'd have healthcare, we'd have a job guarantee, we'd have a housing guarantee. These things Franklin Roosevelt talked about, So and really just we restrict the prerogatives of capital. You restrict interest rates. This is not impossible. Not impossible. It used to be the case. 25% interest is usurious. It was against the law. So you can do it. That you have public banking, so you have public credit. But we don't have. We have a society. Not only is it does the government take the position that the general principle of the society is not that we create good living conditions for everybody and good material lives for everybody. But the first principle of society is that we create the conditions under which individuals can amass infinite amount of wealth. And that's the purpose of our society, to create those conditions. So you've got to get the principle down first. And that's and we got to realize that's the latter is the society we're living in. We like the idea that Elon Musk has $300 billion, that 10 people in society own as much wealth as the bottom 50%, and 20% owns 90% of the wealth. That's crazy. So it's not, this is not human nature. That's the way society is organized. Yeah. And you got to get away from that idea. And the problem in the United States fundamentally is that everyone down to the working class is imbued with this idea. Oh, I'm going to someday Shark Tank, I'll get my $1 billion if I just stay on that's the purpose of society, that I can have the fantasy of being a billionaire someday and kind of figure out a way of doing it. If you don't get away from that, what I say is that there has to be a movement of the working class based on a kind of understanding of society that the majority of people hold and understand and aren't fooled by the narratives, which one of the narratives is, when we don't want to invade Iran, but we do want to invade Iran. The other narrative is, I could become a billionaire. No, you can't. and the purpose of society isn't for you to become a billionaire. It's for all of us to have nice houses and to have good lives and not to be struggling. We can't pay the rent. I mean, it's crazy. I saw someone yesterday, a good tweet yesterday. Yes, someone who works a full-time job, even if it's at McDonald's, should be able to afford the rent, should be able to afford to go to school, should be able to raise their kids. And this is what was promised after World War II in American capitalism. And there was a period of prosperity where things like that were possible for a large section of the working class, but that's gone away. And it went away because 40 years ago, for the reason, I mean, America didn't deindustrialize by magic. The American capitalists, China didn't steal anything from us. Nobody stole anything from us. American capitalists who have the right in this country to control massive amounts of wealth. And that doesn't just mean money. It means I can take my factory and move it over here. It's material production. They control the process of material production of valuable, enormously important goods and services. I'll take my factory and move it to China because I'll make more money doing that. So that's a whole process that went on for 30, 40 years. So I want to say, from the socialist point of view, it's a good question. And fundamentally, we have to get back to the idea of socialism, not of society. We are a society. Money, as I said, is a social tool created by society for social purposes.
Yes.
Factories, electricity generation, transportation, these are socially created things. Milton Friedman used to do the thing where he'd hold up a pencil. I used to do it in my class and say, this pencil, 250, one pencil. This is a social product. Look at all the even in this little pencil, there's wood, there's carbon, there's the eraser, there's metal. This required transportation. This is not some individual tinkering. This is a social product that requires a society that has structures and laws and plans. But we've given all that up. We don't have social planning. It's against the rules to think social. What we do is the government says, we should have public transportation. So let's put out bids for contracts.
Yeah.
And we'll let Elon Musk figure out how to do public transport. No,
Yeah.
you know, China builds 10,000 miles of railway, of, you know, high-speed railway. We don't have anything like it. They came from 20 years ago, 30 years ago, they were dirt poor. Now they're futuristic cities and public. That's because, and they don't, in fact, there's a lot of capitalism in China, but it's socially organized. It's socially planned. There's social direction. If they want to create, and this is what's happening, they want to industrialize. There's a social plan for industrialization, which is backed up by the capital investment of the state, which is unlimited. And not by, and yeah, they make room for capital investments from private, and they actually use that process in a certain way. I'm not quite sure what to call China, but you see, there's a social project, and people understand this is a social thing that we have to plan and we have to do. So we don't have these things because the people who control the country, which is not the working class, elections are baloney. There's a process by which you get to again think that you're controlling something that you're not controlling at all. You have no input into. The reason we have Donald Trump as a president is because the Democratic Party spent three election cycles doing everything it could to defeat the left, in the party. Okay, they deliberately set out. The reason we had Joe Biden, who was a failure and was a lie, and the Democratic Party spent years lying to people about his mental condition, and lying. They knew about it. They did not know about it. They knew about it. And the media, and they lied. And not only lied about it, they attacked people who said anything about it. And Biden was a disaster, and the Democrats were a disaster. And they put Joe Biden in to stop Bernie Sanders. They didn't put him in to stop Donald Trump.
Right there.
They didn't do that. They put the Democratic Party's project has been to stop the left, and that's what it is. That it's the corral to keep the left from leaving away from the control of the capitalist oligarchs who control the Democratic Party. So,
you can say shit show if that's what you wanted to say. That's perfectly fine.
Oh yeah, shit show at the least. So anyway, so you know, in terms of what I would do, I can give you 10 policies that don't actually overthrow capitalism. Well, they create a social, what I'd call a social democratic order, that would win every election. Guaranteed housing, guaranteed jobs, healthcare. Stop these goddamn wars. Stop being Israel's little doggy, little female dog. Stop being, you know, every single one of those Middle East wars was for Israel. We got to end our support for Zionism. That's not an American project. That's a colonial Jewish supremacist project. It's Jewish supremacism over Palestinian Arabs. And the West and Americans have accepted that as something which is good. And that's why it's still there. Because white supremacism over black Africans, which was accepted for centuries, not suddenly, but because of the anti-colonial struggles and the West and Americans and the liberal West had to give that up and oppose it. So that's why South African apartheid ended, because the West learned it had to oppose to protect capitalism in a certain way, but it also, you know, it could not anymore stand to abide this blatant racism, this blatant white supremacism over black Africans. The black Africans had fought it off throughout the rest of Africa, and they couldn't hold on to, and they had to force the white South Africans to give up apartheid. The West abandoned them and went against them. And until and unless the West, the American people, and the West, and American liberal intellectuals and liberal politicians go against Zionism, go against Jewish supremacism over Palestinian Arabs in the way they did against white supremacism over black Africans. That's what's supporting Zionism and this absolute horrible slaughter that we're watching. This is Nazi stuff. This is Leopold in the Congo. This is no excuse for this. And this is the horror of the 20th century. They are now deliberately starving children to death. They're deliberately killing children. Now they're deliberately starving children to death. And we are part of it. And we are part of it because we accept in our minds the idea of Jewish supremacy over Palestinian Arabs. And everybody has to understand that's what it is. You can't do this unless you're accepting that in your mind. Okay? And when you get that out of your mind, then you'll be really pissed off. And then you'll say, stop this. But the American political elite is absolutely committed to that. They're committed to Jewish supremacy over Palestinian Arabs. They're committed to that. And just like they were committed for centuries to white supremacy over black Africans and blacks in the South, and so you gotta go. And people, any liberal who thinks you can just forget about that, put to the side and let Jewish supremacists kill Palestinian children because that's not important, then really screw you. That's just baloney. That's horror. So we're doing it. We're not just letting them do it. We're doing it because we hold that supremacist premise in our head. Anyway, so that's not even socialism. That should just be given. Yeah, right. That should be. As a socialist point of view, I would put out certain policies that would help people immediately. Stop cap interest rates. Donald Trump talked about it. He said he would cap interest rate at 10%. That was one of the best things he's ever said. Where is it? Where is it? He's not controlling things. Donald Trump, the president of the United States is one of my great quotes I like to pull out. They're from the 60s or 70s. This guy was the head of Avis. He said, there are about 20,000 people control the country. He named the groups who were the bankers, the blah, blah, blah. The president of the United States is head tell boy. And that's what he is. And Donald Trump admits it. He got up and he said, oh, I had Miriam and Sheldon Adelson running the White House. They were in the White House more than the people who worked there. They would tell me what to do. And I did it.
He gave her a reward and said that this medal is more important than the medals that we give soldiers who get injured in battle. I mean, it's just outrageous stuff.
So anyway, from the point of view, so first thing, but again, the working class has to mobilize to take power for creating a society that runs on certain principles and not the ones that, and the working class has to understand this. And this is the deep problem of society. Those who are getting screwed over don't understand why they're getting screwed over. And we have this tremendous impulse here, to attach ourselves to someone who comes along as a tough guy or a plain spoken, I'm telling it like it is. I'm the guy who's, and the Democrats failed entirely. And 90% of the Republicans were saying about the Democrats was true. And over the past 8 years. So there's, and people were looking for something. People's lives haven't improved. As you say, everybody knows this. There used to be a union job as a steel worker or an auto worker. It was a family wage. It was a one wage. The entire family, you could have a vacation, you could buy a car, buy a boat. You had a house that you really could afford. None of that. All that's gone. And it's gone because look at what Obama did in 2009 in the financial crisis. And I have as an avatar, I will put it back. And I used to have it in all my things, but I haven't on some of them now. The Newsweek cover story from 2009. We're all socialists now because they all knew the government has to come in and bail out. What were capitalist enterprises? These were bad bets by capitalists who said, oh, I take the risk. That's why I deserve to run the country. You took the risk. You were losing. Obama came in and said, I'm here to prevent the pitchforks. I'm here to stand between you and the pitchforks. And that's what he did. He took a situation and he saved the capitalists. He saved the wealthy who had made bad bets. He let people who had been thrown out of their homes. He destroyed black businesses. Black wealth declined relatively under Obama. And there was a gradual continual decrease of the state of social security in the widest sense of the working class. And what happened was he could have kept people in their homes and said, okay, you lost some of your equity in your home. We're going to renegotiate the mortgages based on the real value of the homes now. But you can stay in your homes. You've paid a mortgage. No, what he did was kick out of the homes and let private equity come in and buy the homes and hedge funds come in and buy the homes and kick people out of their jobs. So there's a whole screw of thing. Anyway, the Democrats who supposedly represent the working class don't. And they're there to prevent the working class from bringing their pitchforks to the Capitol. And so we have to organize, but it's very hard because the election arena is a duopoly that's controlled by them in an absolutely strict way. You can't get on ballots. You can't get into the media. You can't blah, 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 blah. You're just controlled. You cannot build. You can't even get primary someone in the Democratic Party. They wouldn't allow that.
It takes
And
so
look
much
what they
money.
did so you're being controlled. The political process is controlled in a way that prevents the rise of an alternative within the electoral sphere. And that's very important. Not that electoral politics is the most important thing necessarily, but if you have no avenue for contest within the electoral, then what do you do? You can't. So we have a very strictly controlled political system and media system, and it makes it very difficult to figure out how to move forward. Anyway, I'm ranting, but go ahead.
No, you're fine. I was just going to point out Tim Walz, the not VP, the one that failed to be VP.
Yeah.
He came out with a comment that maybe there was a solution that we are not necessarily paying attention to. I'm going to let Tim Walz make his point.
And I think after the fact, it is not second guessing or anything. I think it's fair to go back on and look at this. Look, we had the most qualified person who'd run for president in this country's history at the top of the ticket. That in itself should have got this thing won. We had, in my opinion, and you can disagree with me, I think history will prove me right, a very unqualified person on the other side.
She's not the most qualified
Person in the history of American politics. I mean, FDR, LBJ, George Washington, the most qualified person in the history of American politics, Kamala Harris. Oh, we could have had the most qualified person in the world. It's stuff like this that aggravates the hell out of me. And I want to show one more video.
Yeah.
This is what is his name? What is his name? Governor of California, Newsom is coming to an appraisal that the problem is that people were woke. That's the issue. People were just woke. And if people were less woke, then we Democrats could have totally won it. I think that they're coming to ludicrous conclusions, as opposed to, as you point out, hey, maybe you should have done something for the actual population. And maybe they would have put you in office if they believe that their vote mattered and it was translated to something in regards to a house, healthcare, education, a higher wage, etc. He is going with this woke stuff as if that is the issue. People were just woke.
We lost the popular vote and we lost the electoral vote. We got crushed, and we need to be humble about that, and we need to have some grace, and we need to understand why. Was it because of the incumbency penalty? Was it because of inflation? Was it because of interest rates? Was it because of immigration? Was it because we were too, quote unquote, woke? Was it because of issues with Israel? Was it all of the above? I think we are going through that forensic. We need to understand at the same time. We also have to push back against the whitewaters and headwinds of the Trump administration.
Well, actually, that's not too bad. But he names a lot of things, and they're all true. They're all part. It is all of those things. Look,
I don't know what an incumbent penalty is. The incumbent usually has an advantage when they're running, not a penalty.
But as you say, look, Kamala Harris was the most qualified person, but Joe Biden was the most qualified person. He's as sharp as a tack. He's never been sharper. Hannity was Hannity or Morning Joe. The sharpest, most intellectually precise I've ever seen him. And fuck you if you don't believe that. So that's what these people were doing. They were lying. That's just lies. He knew that was not true when he said it. Okay, so this idea. Look, they're also. Donald Trump is incompetent. We see that. They built Donald Trump into precisely what the people wanted, an anti-establishment warrior.
Yep. They
built him into that. I spent years with Garland and Wilmer and John Kiriakou on the radio, on Sputnik Radio, saying, what are they doing? They're turning Donald Trump into a hero. Let Donald Trump say what he wants to do. And if he says what he wants to do, people will say, what the hell are you talking about? $30? What? Tariffs? That's what you want to do? But no, what they did was they spent since 2016 impeaching him, attacking him. Russians are behind him. Let's put him in jail for cheating on overvaluing his real estate. They changed the law in New York so they could go after him for libel for Jean Carroll. They had to change the law to do that. They made him into I'm an establishment here. Look, I'm their enemy. You don't like them? Enemy of your enemy. So they turned him into this figure that was powerful, important, and strong. And he's not. He's actually incompetent. He doesn't know what he's doing. He gets pushed around by people who, come talk to him and flatter him. But they turned him into a political figure of such importance and anti-establishment. He was the only anti-establishment figure that the Democrats and the media allowed to be anti-establishment. They wouldn't let Bernie Sanders go, and Bernie Sanders himself succumbed and bent the knee to the Democratic Party and shut himself up and didn't talk about health care while his friend Joe Biden was running the country. So Donald Trump is a creation of the Democratic policies and Democratic media, and it was the Democrats who turned wokeness into their program because they didn't have another program. Where did universal health care go? No, we got to have trans women in sports, in men's sports. What? In girls' sports. What? So you have an argument. They wanted those arguments because they don't want an argument about let's cap interest rates. Let's have 94% tax on incomes over $3.5 million. The tax rate in 1944, 45, 1991, 94%. And this was accepted by capitalists because the purpose of those taxes, the marginal tax rate on incomes above $200,000, which is about the equivalent of $3.5 million today, was 94%. And the capitalists, the chair of I keep going back to this, the chair of the Federal Reserve of the New York Fed wrote an article called "Taxes for Revenue Are Obsolete." We don't need taxes for the revenue. We have a fiat money system now, but we have taxes in order to prevent inequality and to prevent inflation. So anybody who makes over $200,000, every dollar over that is taxed at 94%. And they accepted that because they knew going into World War II and coming out of World War II, when communism and socialism was powerful, the ideology of communism and socialism was powerful among the working class. They knew they couldn't allow that inequality. So that's the purpose of those taxes. The working class should not be taxed. People should not be taxed below minimum wage. They're not creating inequality. Those incomes aren't creating inequality or inflation. It's higher incomes that are creating inequality and inflation. And they should be heavily taxed. And they were in this country in the height of our prosperity. From years after that, it was 91% until John Kennedy came in and said, I want to cut taxes. The Democratic president came in and started the tax cutting for the wealthy. So that's what happened. And people accepted 90% marginal tax rates on high incomes. And there's no reason not to. Nobody needs more than $3.5 million a year. And that's public money. It's not private. It's not taxpayer money. It's publicly created social tool that's there to facilitate production and distribution of goods and make sure everybody gets them and has access to it. It's not there to be hoarded by 5 people or 10 people. That's socially destructive. And we have the right to say, no, you can't hoard that money. We're taking it from you. And because we want to use that money as a tool to distribute real social wealth and social values and social goods and services. So anyway, these are the things we can do, but it's overcoming now an a whole ideological atmosphere in the country. And as I say, sinking down to every level of society, bling, bling, go through it, black, white.
I mean, like, I know in rap, for example, and I get it on some level. You have this hypermasculinity. You have these are the women, these are my cars. Here's my gold chain.
Yeah, bling, bling.
That goofball at the Met Gala came out with a piano on his back, and it's like, okay, man,
I missed that.
It's like this is so over the top, right? For blacks, I get it, just because they were denied those things for so long.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know if you've seen Jingo, where he gets a suit and it's just like bright, like over the top thing because he was a slave. He didn't have that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I get it. But I agree with you that there's an ideological hurdle in this country that is over the top. I mean, like, they don't think of it in the way that you think about it. They think of it in a sense of, okay, I did something wrong. I have messed up. And maybe they did mess up, right?
Yeah.
But if you are sitting at your home as a child without lights, okay, that might not be you, right? If you're using a candle to do homework, that's a disadvantage built into you that you have to get over in order to get any kind of productivity as a person in society. If you are, there's a great disparity between homes. I use the example of Bill Cosby. There's a very big difference between Bill and Claire Huxtable and their kids versus somebody who's growing up in a household where a person makes minimum wage. And it's not just money, it's what the money allows, the vacations, the ability to see the world, the political connections, even just the notion of I could be a doctor like my dad, or I could be a lawyer like my mom. That is a big deal. And those things are like, the disparity is great in this stuff. And it's like, it is very hard to get people to see that side of it. They see the side of it from this kind of capitalistic imperative. Well, I have to work this much. I have to do X, Y, Z. I pay my taxes, so people should pay theirs. I only make $15 an hour, so why should the fry cook make $15 an hour? It is a weird way that we go with this.
Not thinking socially, we're thinking individually and completely individually. It's either my fault or it's my success.
Right.
You know,
I did it all myself, or I failed all on my own.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a terrible psychological state for people to be in, because that's why you have such the fentanyl addiction. People are just, they do, the social conditions aren't there to allow everybody to have a decent job and a decent life, but they blame it on their individual failures. Okay. And individual actions contribute to it. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
But you've got to understand that, you know, societies create conditions that allow masses of people to move in certain ways or not. Okay. And yes, there's still a racial disparity in this country. But what the white ruling class of this country learned in the 60s and 70s, the day after, especially the day after the riots or uprisings in Newark and Detroit and Los Angeles, and they had a commission, the Kerner Commission, and you know there were uprisings and rebellions that were from Martin Luther King's massive peaceful civil disobedience to armed uprisings in the South. Robert Williams, Negroes with Guns, Charles Cobb, this nonviolent stuff will get you killed, the Black Panthers, and they were arming themselves. And then there were serious riots, and the white ruling class of the country said, when there were the riots, especially after the King said, this is over. We have to end American apartheid. And the white ruling class of the South obeyed. You're going to obey this. George Wallace turned around and we're going to end American apartheid. And what that had to mean, materially speaking, is we have to allow the creation of a Black middle class, of a Black professional managerial class. We have to allow, you know, Black people who previously, you know, when they gained some kind of wealth and we lynched them and took their property. That's over now. We're going to put them in the front of society and say, look, they're getting wealthy too, and they can keep their wealth and they can grow their wealth and they can own sports teams, etc. So that's very important, and it's a good thing. You know, I've watched this change in my lifetime. I'm going to say, I understand that I'm older enough than people don't quite understand how radical this was. I didn't even know it, but it was part of my life that was just impossible when I was a kid. All of a sudden, you know, the change that's happened in that respect is wonderful and it's great. And that creates a kind of self-reproducing thing, because there's enough Black wealth among the middle class, upper middle, we call the middle class, but you know, there are pockets of Black wealth that are gonna regenerate, because there's a legacy, and kids are growing up saying, I can be a doctor, or I can be a scientist, or I can be the president of the United States. It's not at all a problem. And there's even been a kind of among white kids and white culture, a valorization of black culture and, of blackness in a certain way. So all of this is but the majority of black people, this you still have, but it's not just black people, it's black and white people. And this is everybody. That's one of the things white working class resents. Oh, why are people talking about the horrors of our life? And it's a good question, because that they weren't deemed as threatening in the same way. Now they are. But and the reaction of some white working class people is going to be racist, etc. This is all, but this is you're not solving the social problems. You tried to solve the racial problem, and you did make great efforts in changing the racial dynamic of the country in a certain way, but you changed it somewhat and in an important way materially, allowing the creation of a black middle class and allowing us and preventing a situation where black people would be prevented from accumulating any kind of wealth or any kind of social security. What's the famous town in Oklahoma, the terrible right, where there were.
Oh, I knew you talking about the Oklahoma. Yeah, the riots.
Yeah, right. And Woodrow Wilson, racist son of a bitch. I mean, he fired the blacks from federal jobs. I mean, these were the jobs that people would be able to have good salaries and have decent. He fired them because he was a racist bastard. Okay, so this was more centuries of keeping black people from having any kind of social security and material security. So that has been eliminated in the sense that, there are black conservatives and black wealthy people, and nobody says they shouldn't be wealthy because they're black or we're going to take their money from, etc. But the material reality for the black working class is, well, the best job. What are the best jobs for black working class? Now that's interesting and tells you the change. What are the best jobs for the black or the white working class, for that matter? Cops.
Really?
Cops. Right? That's a job. You have a salary. You have good benefits. You have a union. Look at all the black rappers whose fathers are cops. Right? I mean, that's become a job that wasn't a job for black people till 50 years ago. Right? Now, look at the police departments and the chiefs of police and etc. I mean, this is one of the issues that we have. That's okay. We want you to come in and be cops, right? And that's one of the best working class jobs that remains in this country, to be a cop. You have a good job. You have a secure job. You get benefits. You have a pension, right? Killer Mike. I remember that when the Atlanta riots and the black white woman mayor got up and said, "You're rioting against the people who own that property are black people, and Killer Mike owns half of that neighborhood." Killer Mike got up and, yeah, my father's a cop, or my mother's a cop. So these are things that you got to realize and that embeds the ideology further. Okay, so you have a whole system, but the social reality of life for the majority of black people, the majority of white people who aren't, you don't have college degrees, let alone advanced degrees. Right. Who don't have relatives who can get them good jobs. And there are no good jobs. There are no jobs. And, there's no more good jobs in good union jobs that people, they're very, very few. They're diminishing and diminishing. So you don't have family wages. And they make one mistake and they get arrested. And then their lives are fucked forever. Yep. And they're going to be on fentanyl and they're going to be on drugs and blah, 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 blah. So these are the things that are absolutely part of the white and black working class and sub-working class now. And that social reality is just ignored and treated as a set of individual problems and individual failures. Oh, no, he's a thug. Or, oh, he's a redneck and he's a stupid redneck, or he's a nasty thug and blah, 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 whatever you want to say, however you want to characterize it. And it still gets characterized racially in certain ways and blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And that all just prevents anybody from working together to put a stop to it, And,
do you see that changing? Like, do you see, I think you said something very interesting. You said, yeah, it didn't seem like that was going to change until it did. Like, it just seemed impossible. It just seemed like this is just reality up until the point where it actually changed. And look, I can't see around corners. but there are corners.
Yeah.
Do you see that tilting in some way, where there's a point where it's like things are so bad that not doing anything is worse than doing something?
Well, look, I first of all, I think that's one good, very good thing to say, that you can't eliminate the possibility of surprise. You know, surprises come. But what I'm saying is that the racial politics and the status of Black people in this country didn't change by accident. That was a program.
Right.
That was a program. Right. And because they knew it was necessary, because they didn't want there was a fear of there's a song, fear of Black power, fear of something, but and it was not just Black power, but there was a fear of revolution. There was a fear of, and so they changed things and it was a program for that. Okay. But the program was limited. So what I'm interested in is not another program. They'll figure out something that they'll try to do. Okay. And, what they're going to do is probably, let's say the most radical version of it. And this is not in terms of racial politics, but this is in terms of the general political socialist politics. We're going to give everybody a UBI. We're going to give everybody a universal basic income. We'll give you $2,000 a month. And watch them. Then all of a sudden they'll stop the where we get the money thing, because they know they can do that. They can do that tomorrow. We'll give everybody $2,000 a month, but you still got to buy your own health care, or most of it. You still got to do this. You still got to do that. And we're going to continue to run the show and suck up all the rest of the wealth for ourselves. Okay. So that's maybe the kind of thing they're going to do. And people like that. Oh, wow, that's good. So, I don't know. That's one thing, but this is the point. This is a matter of I don't want there to be, I want people to get together and work to take power. This is not about money. Money is part of it, but money is a subset of the power. And this is what the social democratic countries, look at Europe, the Scandinavian countries, social democracy and good progressive social policies came into being because there was a fear of the working class taking power. And at the end of the day, the capitalists will always say, we'll give you everything we want, everything you want. We'll give you the right wage. We'll give you the vacation. Just leave us in power, so that we take the profits. And okay, we'll share as much of those we can with you, but we own this. And so that's, so if you look at the Scandinavian countries, especially, they could have taken power. No, we're going to give you everything. When I was organizing graduate student union, when I was in graduate school, we had a demand that we had guaranteed jobs, teaching assistant jobs. And they, at the end of the day, said, we'll give you all teaching assistant jobs, but we're not going to guarantee it. We have the power. So they will buy you off. They will buy you off with good things. So what I'm saying is they'll figure something to do, or they'll crush. Now they're turning around to just plain we'll put you in jail. We're going to put you in jail if you oppose Zionism. That's one thing. They're absolutely adamant about, we can't allow an anti-Zionist movement one is developing, and we can't allow that to continue. We've got to keep people not thinking about their attachment to Jewish supremacism over our Jewish colonial supremacism. We don't want people thinking about that, so you can't even talk about it. This is a problem. But in terms of the general material well-being of society, it's a problem for them. And I think that the UBI is going to be one of the things, and we should have a UBI, but we should have a job guarantee. People should have jobs. People should have health care. People should have there should be housing provided. You can build it. And again, it's not the money. You can build it. There's at least 6 or 7 empty houses right now for every unhoused person in the United States. Okay. And this is a matter of social polity, but it's a matter of who controls the polity, and the polity and the means of production, the means of building things, are controlled by individuals who are controlling it in a way that continues to preserve their ability to amass as much wealth as they want. And it has to be controlled by the society as a whole, by the majority of people, for the purpose of making sure that the majority of people have good lives, and using whatever materials we have in our society and whatever skills we have, and it's a lot in our society, to make sure that everybody has a good life. And nobody should have 5 homes when there are 1 million people who don't have any.
There's so much wealth in this country. I mean, Elon Musk is going to be the first trillionaire. Put it in perspective, right? That is an astonishing amount of money for one person to effectively have.
And it's power.
Yeah, and it equals power. I mean, like even the political, like Donald Trump right now is getting money from foreign sources into his coins. He's lining his pockets with cash. And I think that's the ultimate contradiction in the society, that we have a society that's organized around making as much money as possible, using the money for political clout, and effectively ignoring the working class or having a dog and pony show for elections, when really it's the power that's concentrated and dumped into the political system.
Yep.
And it's like, that doesn't work. Like FDR, okay, he might have been able to, as he quote, saved capitalism, but it was short-lived. I mean, the communist Soviet Union fell apart. China exists, but China is this kind of weird quasi-communist that rides the bull of capitalism for its own, like for its own betterment. But it doesn't work here. And we can see it politically, like Joe Biden being president, Trump being president. Both of these people are radically incompetent. We can see a political system that can't even pass a budget. And then when they do pass a budget, it is just raping the population. They are taking nearly $1 trillion from Medicaid. That is astonishing. They're destroying Social Security, firing the world's richest man, firing all of these federal workers from jobs.
Yeah.
And that's what they think is perfectly okay. We don't believe the public is going to do anything about the fact that we're doing this at all.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Because they may be right.
Yeah.
That's the sad part, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how to change that per se. I'm curious on your take on Donald Trump. Like,
let me just say one thing, because what you just pointed out is very important, and it's about class power, and this is precisely the point. They instituted they instituted the New Deal, they instituted social democratic parties in Europe, but the class in power was still the owners of capital. And this is why it's a question of power. It's not a question of numbers. It's a question of having the power to control the capital wealth of society and the production of wealth of society. And when you leave the capitalists in power, they will eventually come back. And even if they will come back, that's what's happened in this country. It's what's happened in Western Europe. They have the power. They're going to lay back for a while, but then they're going to come back. And having the wealth is a matter of having the power. They have the power. So it's a matter of taking power from the capitalist class, and there's nobody who owns, the electricity of the country. I mean, it's crazy. But anyway, for individual profit purposes.
By the way, I agree with you on that. I think it's outrageous that the federal government doesn't own the electricity grid, trains. Like, I find that stuff to be vital interests, like like necessary for society. The last thing you want is a capitalist to be making profit off of that nonsense. I 1,000% agree with you on that.
Anyway, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You were talking about Trump.
No, I was just like saying, like, how do you frame him in this way? Like, he has fascistic tendencies. The notion that he gets elected under a constitution, but apparently doesn't understand or believe in due process, which is, again, pretty astonishing that somebody would even say out loud. Is it that the contradictions have gotten so bad that he is the guy who ends up in charge, that the veneer of the capitalists or the veneer of the typical politician melts away? I mean, one of the weirdest things that I've seen under normal circumstances, billionaires, millionaires, these people don't necessarily show their faces in public. They tend to work behind the scenes. That is not the case anymore. Elon Musk out in front. Bloomberg literally ran in a race, believing, oddly enough, that the public was going to love him to death. He spent $1 billion in a primary only to get just crushed. Mm-hmm. But I guess my thing is, it's not normal in our political system to see billionaires that much out front. Miriam Adelson getting a reward, where Donald Trump's like, hey, you're a fantastic American. Here's your thing. Thank you for the $100 million that you gave me. That is a weird quirk. And by the way, it's not like he's liked. Elon Musk has damaged his own company by being so unlikable. And yet, in his mind, the public's going to love me. It's bizarre. Trump, billionaire, run for president, wins. That's a strange twist on things with these people.
But, that is part. It's been for at least 20 years. It's part of American. They admire billionaires.
Yeah.
This is Shark Tank. They admire billionaires, and it's become. It's true. It's become more aggressively promoted, but it's billionaire populism, and they admire guys and gals who talk like that, who come across as one of them. And this is the crazy thing. Donald Trump comes across as talking like, because he says some things straight out. When he gets up on the stage in 2016 and says, "Hey, I know these guys are all bought off because I bought them. I donated to their point." So that's what people want to hear. They want to hear someone saying that. And he's absolutely right. He was loved by the Democrats. Oprah wanted him to run for president. He's a big pal of the Democrats. This is a big club, and you ain't in it. And he's not that rich, by the way. He gets by in billionaire terms, but he's a terrible businessman. He bankrupted casinos. You can't lose money on a casino.
Yeah, the house always wins, right? Until Trump wins it. Right.
I used to play poker at the Taj Mahal. I actually shook his hand once in a walkthrough at the Taj Mahal. But so he comes across in a certain way, and this is part of a bizarre ideological thing. People who speak in a certain way and who come across as populist, even if they're not, he has no idea what the lives of real people are like. $30, 250 pencils. What are you talking about? He has no idea what the lives of real people, and he doesn't have any idea seriously about politics and about international relations. I'm going to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. No, you're not. That's just silly. It's stupid. And to some extent, he believes all this stuff because he thinks, oh, if you're a guy like me, if you're a tough guy oh Jesus, is this coming on? If you're a tough guy like me, I'm seeing messages about battery saver. I'm afraid I'm not.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. I'm seeing my messages. My computer, I think, is running out of power. If you talk tough and you talk, tell it like it is, everybody's going to admire. And that's an ideological problem in the United States. And the problem is, Donald Trump is incompetent. Joe Biden was incompetent. But the problem is they give you this choice between two incompetents, Joe Biden and Donald Trump, or an incompetent Donald Trump, who at least speaks in a way that makes you feel like he understands something of what your life is, and a total kind of creep like Hillary Clinton, who nobody likes or would like, and who is, we know what her policies are, and they're terrible. So this is the situation we have, and it is controlled behind the scenes. People do not get to run for president unless they're going to continue unconditional support of Zionism, unless they're going to continue fighting for the American imperialism and the hegemony of American capitalism in the world. And that's Donald Trump's problem now. He's destroying the hegemony of American capitalism better than any of our leftists have ever done. And it's true. And they're going to turn against him. I would not at all be surprised to see Donald Trump go down, die of a heart attack,
before he even finishes
a heart attack, or another assassination. What he's doing to the American capitalist system is, on the one hand, wonderful in the world, because he's destroying but it was happening anyway. There was a decline of the power of American capitalism in the world, and he's just accelerating it immensely. And they're going to turn on him. I mean, again, people like Elon Musk, he has a lot of money. He's smart at certain things, but he's stupid at a lot of things. He's really stupid about a lot of things. You see this, but people, this is at every level of our society. You think people, you think celebrities, you think what they're like, and you find out, well, they're really assholes, or they're really stupid, or I thought this was a nice guy, and and people who come across as tough guys on screen, turn out to be really gentle in public and in private, and blah blah blah. So all of these things are true, and we are in a situation where, in the political world, they create narratives. They create narratives about people, and they create narratives about policies, and that's what we're in. And it's very difficult to overcome. But we try, don't we?
Yeah, we do. Jim, man, thank you for this. I was super curious about, they're doing construction upstairs. It's bugging the hell out of me. I'm sorry. Thank you for this. I was super curious about basically how the socialist point of view looks at this. I mean, because this is a shit show. Yeah. I mean, like, you know, the notion that you destroy trillions of dollars within a few weeks is amazing. Like, that's, nobody would have ever like thought of president coming in to do that. We're having a world war with tariffs and getting yourself into a trade war with China that you can't get out of.
Can't win.
And that your ego is so big that you can't pick up the phone and say, hey, Xi Jinping, we need to talk about this. Instead, it's like, Xi Jinping needs to call us. Like, this is ludicrous, right? And to your point, where he's like, eggs are down, as if he does groceries.
Yeah.
As if Donald Trump is out there doing groceries or pumping gas in his car. He's not doing any of that stuff. He bullshits his way through interview after interview after interview. And you think to yourself, okay, how long could that last? How long could a president do that and be that incompetent? I don't have an answer for that. I think we're going to find out. Jim, there we are. Dr. Jim Kavanaugh, leftist, socialist, analyst, and writer. You can find his work on polemicist.substack.com, counterpunch.com, another great outlet. And you can also find it here, his interviews with Garland and his interviews with Press TV. Thank you for this. I really do appreciate this.
Thank you for having me, Jamal. Always fun.
Be safe.
Take it easy.
All righty. And we have another guest coming